Hi, Giles.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. In wet
Good.
Suffolk.
Well, I'm in wet Wirral, so we're just waiting for Tim, one of our ambassadors, to join us today. Tim's going to be the one who's questioning Giles and kind of also hosting. But I guess I know he's on the way in a minute. So until then, Giles, what are you going to talk about today? I'll ask you.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about managing private data. I'm not going to go into great detail about the GDPR rules and regulations. There's plenty of information about that on the internet, and there's a lot of good stuff on the UK MSA website under GDPR and private data. So certainly, should have their own private data procedures and profiles, but today is more about how do you actually implement it, how do you keep people's data private, and a bit about the sort of unique things about a shed, because we're not like a company, we're not that sort of organization, and we do have people operating dangerous equipment, so
Yeah, that's true.
that makes a slight difference to how we deal.
Yeah, and I guess lots of people with, potentially vulnerable members or people with all different kind of things that you may need to be aware of when they're in
Yes.
the shed.
Yeah, and how you handle that information is obviously very
Mm.
important, and has to be in sympathy with the requirements of the member. Some members are very happy for everybody to know about all their ills and ailments, and whereas others are much more private. And so you
Yeah,
have to have a sort of, we need to keep some of that information, but obviously we have to respect the privacy of the person who is the owner of that data.
yes, definitely. And just to kind of highlight again, Giles is from Debenham Shed in Suffolk. I know we've got a little intro in a minute, but that's where Giles is from. And you are very into technology. You live in a very olden days home, yet it's also a smart home full of gadgets and technology. Is that right?
Yes. Indeed, I think I counted over 100 devices in the house the other day.
What?
Whenever I ring up BT to complain about my Wi-Fi, they throw a fit when they realise how much is going on here. Yes, this house was built in 1564, roughly,
Wow.
as accurately as we can measure. So yeah, it's been around a while.
Yeah, that's so cool. A good mix of old and new.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah. But Giles has kindly kind of said, people are welcome to email him if you've got questions about this. If you've got any comments or questions, and you're watching along, or you're watching afterwards, you can leave comments on the video, and we'll come back to you if it's not live. But if you do have any comments at the minute or questions for Giles, please type them in the comment box if you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook or whatever it is, and we'll do our best to answer them. But hopefully Tim will join us in a minute. I think we should
Can we do the
probably.
intro, because Tim
Yeah,
probably
we'll do.
can work that out.
Where are we? Let me just bear with me. Let me get the slides.
So for everybody watching, Rachel's going to operate the slides. I'm going to tell her when to move on, a bit like Chris Whitty.
Yes, definitely. Where's it gone? Here we go.
Next slide, please.
Oh, why is it not displaying slides? Oh,
this is why Rachel didn't get me to do it.
I had them on the screen before. Bear with me. Where have they gone?
Something's changed in the background.
This is a technical issue. Present slides. Okay, they're the wrong. No, they're the wrong slides.
I have no slides to show.
No, why is it showing these? I'm
Oh,
so sorry, everybody. Yeah, but they were already loaded on. But the other ones are loaded on. We had them before. Well, this is terrible. I don't know why the slides aren't loading. Giles,
on screen if you've got them on PowerPoint.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that. Oh God, let me try and upload them one more time. Giles, do you want to tell the story about the lady with the DNR while I try and upload these slides one more time?
We were having a little bit of a chat before the meeting started, and we were talking about DNRs, do not resuscitates, and I heard a lovely story that the lady was really, really keen on her DNR, so she had tattooed across her chest, do not resuscitate. And just to make sure, on her back, she had tattooed, please turn over, which I thought was brilliant. Let me see if I...
I've got it.
You got it? Ah, hooray.
Got
Yep.
it. Thank you.
Lovely.
Sorry, everybody. How boring for everybody. Right, we'll jump straight in. Giles, who are you? Tell us about yourself.
So I've been around the IT industry for an awful long time. It's always a salutary experience going to museums and places like Bletchley Park and realizing quite how big and horrible the kit was that I used to run. But I ended up life with a very nice, fun job working for Sky TV as head of research and development, which was really good fun. I'm now retired, which is why I can spend a lot of time on the shed IT gear, and I have a very smart home. This is for a 500-year-old house with over 100 devices on it. So it's a very smart home indeed. And the next session, we're going to be talking about utilizing some of that technology for allowing shed members to log in. Next slide, please.
Brilliant. And I'll just say, just had a hello from, I'll just flash it up. Carol and Emma, yeah, nice to hear from you. I've met them before, so that's really nice. So hi, welcome. And I know Emma was on the last session as well, so hopefully something useful for you today. Okay, next one. So
the reason behind these 4 sessions is that I was asked to present on Shed IT at Shedfest, and I put together slides, and there were just far too many of them. So Rachel says, you won't have time to do all that. Why don't you split it up into small pieces and create 4 webinars prior to Shedfest, and then when we actually get to Shedfest, we can spend more of the time discussing where we go from here. What can we get the UKMSA to do for us? What can we do ourselves? What sort of organization do we need? Is there any software that we need? Can we share experiences better in the future? So I've only got, I think, about a 20-minute session at Shedfest, but hopefully by the time we get there, everybody kind of understand at least where Debenham Shed's coming from.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll have these to refer back to as well. So if people have got questions about these topics, we can send them back. Okay, next slide.
Okay, please. So there's legislation which requires us to protect our members' private data. And I'm not going to go, as I said earlier, I'm not going to go into details of this. You can find lots of it on the internet and the UKMSA website, though you do need to log in order to access those pages. So get yourself a UKMSA login if you haven't already. So more today, I'm going to talk about the implementation. How do you actually do this stuff rather than the law and the legal requirements on doing it? I think a lot of small organisations, and I suspect Sheds are no different, keep their member information on spreadsheets on private people's PCs. This is really perhaps not suitable in these days to be secure enough. If you do it that way, then please make sure that you password protect the spreadsheets, and never, never, never leave them on a USB stick. The number of times you hear on the news about military people and things like that leaving their laptops and them being stolen. It's probably one of the most common way that private data gets released is through that mechanism, is people just leaving data around. There's some sort of fairly obvious things, and I think I have a bee in my bonnet about people sending out email shots with everybody's private email addresses in it. We even had one from the government the other day, from a council with everybody's email address in it.
Yeah, I get them sometimes from,
just crazy.
Oh, it's your professional person.
One of them sent out an email with somebody's tax return in it, CC'd a whole list of people. It's just crazy. Wow. It should never, ever happen. So the first thing is always use blind copy. Never, ever, ever send to a list of people. And you have to be fairly rigorous about that and remember to do that. It often happens, most often, is when you do a reply all. The number of times you do reply all, and you realise that you sent something snotty to somebody that you didn't want to see. So be really, really careful with reply all. You can release private data pretty quickly by doing that.
Yeah, there's some really funny stories about that when people have literally replied to like a company of 1,000 employees about something really, really stupid, or as you say,
and we've all done it. We've all done it at least, probably only once, but we have done it.
But I guess the thing is with that, and I think sometimes when it's a mix of kind of personal emails, so obviously, sometimes people will use a work email and that's okay, isn't it? To kind of have, if you're in a work environment and you kind of copying people's work emails in, but it's when there's a mix of personal emails in there, or you just have to be so careful, don't you?
That's fine. And even I think some work emails, I've certainly noticed that, CEOs and people like that generally try to hide their email because they know that their customers are going to find it and send them, complaints and what have you.
All
So
kinds.
just be very careful about that.
Yeah, I think it's a safe option, isn't it?
Indeed. There are rules about mail shotting, and when you do send a mail shot, this obviously doesn't apply if there's only like half a dozen of your mates, but if you're emailing the whole of your membership, or a significant number of people, some of whom who don't know each other very well and things like that, then you really ought to use a sort of formal mechanism for doing mail shots. People must opt into the mail shot, and they must have an opportunity to opt out of it. So that's really, really important. You also have to watch out if you write your own apps. Certainly we have a lot of apps, and we'll be talking about them in this series. And so we have to be very careful about password protecting data. And in fact, on our accident book, the only person that can see it after the person has created it is the committee and people who need to handle it. So you can write apps that are secure and suitably private. But you've always got to think of, if that was my email address, my phone number, would I be happy with it being looked after that way?
Yeah. Or your private information. If you don't have an app for your accident book, because I imagine not many sheds will, what's an alternative for that?
A proper physical accident book, and you should keep that locked away.
Locked. Yeah.
Yeah. We have apart from we have some of our members have got medical issues which are possibly life-threatening, and so clearly we have to ask their permission to allow the other members to know. So, for instance, we have a member who carries an EpiPen. It's obviously really, really important that everybody in the shed knows that, and knows that if she does suffer, if it's for allergic reactions, if she does have a severe allergic reaction, we all know that we've got to go and hunt in a handbag to find the EpiPen, and she's shown us all how to use it. And now that is very, very private data, but she has agreed for us to use that. On the other hand, we've got a member who has a DNR, which was why Rachel and I were talking about DNRs earlier. That person does not want everybody to know they've got a DNR. And so therefore what we have to have is we have a locked cabinet that only the committee and the first aiders have access to. We use a key safe. And so that way we keep it on paper because our shed is out in the wilds. We don't have a reliable internet connection. So we have to sort of have a paper backup for that sort of data. But we keep that in a locked cabinet, and so that only the people with the need to access it have access to it.
Yeah. So if in doubt, it should be password protected. It should be in a locked cabinet, and it shouldn't be left lying around or on a USB stick.
No, I mean, it's really a good idea that you create a procedures, a data protection procedures document, because that will force you to look through all of the things you do, how you deal with them, how you do backups, what sort of data you keep. And I think it's proper that should be made available to all your membership. There is, if you Google, actually, there are one or two sheds have made their data privacy policies public. And those, Hailing Island, I was looking at today, have a very, very good one.
That's so Jerry, one of our ambassadors there.
Okay, so it's worthwhile going to the Hailing Island site and looking at their policies, because certainly it's pretty clear about how you do how they handle backups and where the data goes and what have you.
Brilliant.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
CCTV is covered by GDPR. Very, very important. If you do have CCTV, then you must put up signs that not only say that CCTV is in operation, but albeit in small print, why you're doing it. Typically, it's for the purposes of public safety is the usual comment on it. And why they insist you do that, I don't know, because it's let's talk about obvious. That is pretty obvious. it's a good idea not to place cameras with microphones where people have private conversations. So we have a galley in our shed where there's some comfy chairs where all the private conversations take place. We do not have CCTV at all in that area. And if it's in sort of general areas, as I said, it's a good idea to disable microphones.
Yeah.
If you have a sophisticated system and you can enable them when the shed's not occupied, so you can hear the burglars while they're there, obviously do that. But under normal circumstances, I would advise you disable your microphones on your cameras.
I can't imagine you'd need them really for general.
No, I've had CCTV at home with microphones, and really, you don't. You very rarely. It's more of you get a laugh out of it more than anything else.
I think especially as what you said about kind of the shed environment and the kind of conversations that could be happening that could be picked up that are sensitive. I think that's
a good idea to turn the mics off. It's also important that you restrict access to the footage for fairly obvious reasons. So we have just myself and the committee have access to the footage. And also you have to have a retention policy. So our retention policy is that we keep the footage for 2 weeks unless it's required for a police analysis or something like that. So generally speaking, we wipe the discs every 2 weeks.
Yeah, because if there's film footage of somebody, that's classed as data, isn't it? That's classed as their data.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why you have to do that. But it's pretty straightforward to do that, and just wipe the discs. Or if we use a file server to hold all of our videos, so we just knock them off the file server every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Is it expensive to kind of set up if sheds are thinking about doing it, or is it
CCTV? The units themselves are quite cheap. The standalone one, we just recently bought one for 90 quid without a disk drive and 4 cameras. But then you'd have to buy a disk drive. But there's a couple of us in our shed who are IT nuts, and we had a few spares. The other thing is if you've got an old Sky box, I did used to work for Sky, you can nick the disc out of it, and actually they're quite big discs in the more recent ones. So quite a good source of cheap discs is an old Sky box that you don't use anymore.
Yeah, that's a handy hint. I had a question.
So it's not very expensive.
Can you see that question? Do you have any CCTV?
Yeah, Emma, we are just literally installing our CCTV right now, and only this morning I was working on the policy. The policy basically says we'll only share it outside of the shed if it's required by the police.
So is that just like a line in your policy that you'd really need?
It's a line in the policy.
Yeah, just a line.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd have the general policy about having CCTV, and it would just include a line about having to share it in that instance. Yeah.
Is that okay, Emma?
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Brill. Thanks for that question, Emma. As well, if you want to follow up with anything, you can email Giles or us afterwards.
Yeah, if you want to know, Emma, about CCTV in general, just drop me an email, because I've been messing around with it for many years.
Next slide. Are you ready?
Yes, please. Sorry. So we found one of the best ways of keeping us honest with regard to mail shots and what have you is to use a third-party piece of software. And along with many, 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 many other organisations, we use a piece of software called MailChimp. I have to say I'm really impressed with MailChimp. The free version is superb. It certainly keeps you clean with regard to GDPR. It's very secure. It's got 2-factor authentication for login, password.
Just to start at the very start, how would you describe MailChimp to somebody?
So it was originally designed as just a mail shotting program,
right?
For creating mail shots, but it's used for lots of different things. And I'm going to talk a bit more about what it does in the next slide, so you'll get an idea about what it does. So one of the really useful things about it is you can extend it to add more and more data. So we put all of our private member data into MailChimp, because that way, it can only be accessed by going to MailChimp. We can restrict who has access to MailChimp very easily. And MailChimp look after the backups, and they keep it secure. So it's a good repository for all of that sort of thing. And also it enforces GDPR compliance. We'll talk a bit more of this as we go down. but it is very good for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, and lastly, I mean, it is a good mail shopping program.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you send out a mail shot, it tells you how many people have read the mail shot, tells you how many people have clicked on which links in the mail shot. You know, it gives you a lot of data and that's why people, commercial organisations use it. It's not just a thing for creating a letter to send to people. It actually gives you a huge amount of feedback of how they interact with that.
Brilliant.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
So one of the things that you have to do with GDPR is you have to enable people to subscribe to a mailing list. And MailChimp is very good in that it has a number of mechanisms that you can either embed into your website. And so this is the sort of default format. We use WordPress for our public mail site. And I'll be talking a lot more about WordPress in, I think, the last of this set of sessions, but it's a code-free way of creating a sophisticated website. And so all we had to do is embed this plugin into WordPress, describe what fields we wanted to collect, and MailChimp looks after everything else. So a user can go to our public website, they can go to this page, they can enter their details, click on the sign up, and that will automatically put them into a sort of holding bay in MailChimp. And then our membership secretary reviews that, approves them, or otherwise that just stops kids from messing about on the site. And then from that point on, the person is enrolled for our mail shots. And then every time they get a mail shot, there's an unsubscribe button, which will automatically, without our intervention, unsubscribe them, which is
brilliant
for GDPR. So it's good easy to put it into the rest of your SHEB's website.
Yeah, great. Because there's nothing more annoying than when you kind of, and I'm not saying a shed email would be annoying, but websites kind of, you've signed up for one thing and then you constantly get emails from them, and and
you never really believe the unsubscribe button.
Does it work?
This really works. It does. It's quite brutal about taking you out if you unsubscribe.
We've
Next
got
slide,
Tim.
please.
Tim has joined us, so I'm going to add Tim in, and I will let Tim take over if that's okay. Here's Tim. Hi, Tim.
Hello, Tim.
Hi. Sorry about technical difficulties, and it all came down to the fact that Google Chrome wasn't my default browser. Anyway.
Oh, the irony of this IT session, IT issues, and that's.
Anyway, it's all sorted now, and good afternoon, Giles.
Hello, Tim.
It's been I've been through some of the information that you've given, and in terms of collection of information that you're going to put on a database for a shed, I mean, what's the best way of doing that? I mean, we use a paper form, but I mean, what would you recommend sheds do?
Yeah, we have used paper forms. We also have we don't actually keep a lot of private data. When it boils down to it, it's really the contact details, next of kin, and any significant medical stuff that people want to share. So we just drop it straight into MailChimp, to be honest. And I'm going to show some of the MailChimp pages in a minute. We do have a membership form where basically the members consent to us keeping the private data that we do keep. It also consent to have their photographs that are taken in the shed on our website. There's some sort of catch-all clauses in our membership form that allow us to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Now, MailChimp's a really difficult thing to demo because if I demo our live one, I'll almost certainly by accident reveal somebody's private data. So what I've done is I've taken some screen grabs and obfuscated, blurred the relevant bits. But if you're interested in MailChimp, there's some really good demos on the internet. So there's one there. It lasts 15 minutes. I was thinking of copying out of this call altogether and just giving people the URL to the demo, but thought I'd better work for my supper. So next slide, please. So the first thing is personal information. I apologize if these are small, but basically all MailChimp really needs to know is your email address, first name and last name. But you can, in addition to that, capture address, date of birth, You can get phone numbers. You can get the next of kin phone numbers. All these are sort of extensions that you can add. You can add various categories, like whether they're a committee member or not. You can information about the last payment dates and things like that. We keep all of that in MailChimp so that we don't, it's all secure in there. We don't have to worry about putting it onto USB sticks or whatever. So these extensions are really easy to add. And then for each person, you can give them what are called tags. So I am a full member. I'm also a guest. I'm on the committee, and I'm one of the test newsletter proofreaders. So when we create a mail shot, we can say which tagged people they go to. So when we're creating a mail shot, a newsletter, we initially send it out to the proofreading group, and they get to proofread it, approve it or otherwise, and then off it goes. So MailChimp is brilliant for, I mean, you can richly extend it ad infinitum. I don't know what the limit is to the number of extra bits of data, but certainly in terms of most of the information we need as a shed, we can add various columns to the database to record that.
And what's the easiest way of finding MailChimp?
Just Google for MailChimp. This is the free version. The only difference between the free and the paid for is, I think, the total number of members you can have, which I think is something like 1,000. It's a lot more than we would ever need in the shed. And also there are some restrictions on the format of the mail shots you send out, in that it has to have their logo on there. But that's, I don't think, any great shakes. Nobody's ever complained about that so far. Next slide, please.
It could be useful, just one thing, just could be useful for also tagging people who are first aiders and, you know, pat testers and something within the shed as well.
Exactly. Yeah. You can do that as tags so that you can email just the pat testers or just the first aiders in the same way. We've got a question from Peter. Any tips on getting members to engage with emails? One of the great things about MailChimp is it tells you how many people have opened the email and who's opened it. And so if you find somebody's consistently not opening email, you can find some other way of chasing them up. But yeah, inevitably, some people emails go to spam or whatever, and it's very difficult to stop that happening. Though I think we've tended to find that MailChimp emails are less likely to go into spam than some of the other emails we get. Good tip is get people to add the email address from which the emails are sent. So as part of the setup for MailChimp, it says, who do you want it to appear as the from? If that's in your address book, it's very unlikely to be put into spam. But you know, there's no 100% hard and fast rule on that. Okay, so when you create a mail shot, so that's the first thing about private data. But the next thing you want to do is create mail shots, and so MailChimp has a brilliant set of templates. So what you do is you create, if you've got a regular newsletter or something like that, then you can create a template for that, and then all you have to do when you're sending an individual mail shot is to pick the template and then edit it accordingly. So you're not starting from scratch every time you send out an email. So that's very, very handy. Next slide, please. And then when you've got your template, you can edit it. Interestingly, you can embed any of the fields that are within the database. So you see here, it's picking up the last payment date from the data we hold within MailChimp, so that an individual can see when their subscription is due, for instance. You can embed photos, you can change the layout, you can embed links. You know, it's all the normal things you'd expect to see in a mail shot. So it's quite a sophisticated tool for that sort of thing. Next slide, please. And then finally, you need to address it. And basically, it's a case of choosing the tags you want to send to, or you can send it to individuals. But normally, it's you choose a tag or a set of tags, and it will send them out to those people. Okay, next slide, please. Once you sent it, you get the stats that I was talking about earlier on. So part of this set of sessions was to sort of try and work out what sort of questions that we want to discuss at Shedfest in July, I believe. So the first thing is, I think it's probably obvious, but do we need to set up a group of Shed IT experts? I think there's a lot to be said for us sharing our expertise, there's a lot of us each individually trying to solve the same problem. I'm sure it would be a lot easier if we had groups of us who could be relied on to help for those sorts of things. How will we set it up? Who would run it? How would that fall within the rest of the UK MSA organisation? So that's one of the things that we will discuss at Shedfest and try and come to a conclusion on. It may be worthwhile, I think, if Sheds are interested in hosting a MailChimp training session. Certainly, I would be interested in helping people set that up if that was appropriate, and perhaps do it in a sort of longer version of one of these where we actually set up a test instance and are able to show people exactly how MailChimp works. And finally, GDPR is a very, very important topic. There are plenty of experts around. I wouldn't profess to be one myself. I normally apply the "is this sensible and would I be happy with my data being treated this way" rule. But yes, there's I see that Rachel's just put up the ICO page. That's a really, really good site for learning about GDPR. But maybe, you know, it'd be worthwhile doing a specific one for Sheds, bearing in mind our somewhat unusual position of not being a company, not employing people in the main, and having a fair number of people who are maybe not as young as they would like to be. So that's it for today, I think. Tim, do you have any questions?
Well, it's certainly been very useful. It's opened my eyes in terms of what the possibilities are in terms of being able to communicate with members. I think to a certain extent, it's number critical in terms of at what level of membership do you get to when it really becomes a useful tool.
I suspect that if you've got more than 10 people in your organisation,
yeah,
you know, it's definitely worth, almost I would say essential, that you have a proper tool for doing it. And secondly, you've got to protect the data anyway, even if there's only 5 of you. And so, you know, just getting a tool that allows you to go, okay, I can relax. I don't need to worry about that. All the data's in that locked box. I don't need to worry about it anymore. I'm done with it. That will make your IT guy in the shed a lot more relaxed.
Yeah, I think the other thing about it is that it's particularly useful for, you know, again, going back to the fact of our age profile and whatever, people who, you know, suddenly, for whatever reason, whatever, can't actually make it to the shed, to keep them in the loop. In the same way we use Zoom calls to keep people in touch during the pandemic. I think, you know, by making sure they're in a circulation list, so they know what's happening, that they haven't been forgotten, as it were. I think it from the point of view, that point of view, is a very good sort of husbandry tool to make sure people are not forgotten.
Yes, I mean, we use it for that. We also have what we call honorary members, who are our benefactors, people who've donated things, money or whatever over the years, and we include those on those distribution lists for the same reason as you just said, Tim. It reminds them we're still here, and also we can advise, you know, the world at large when we need more money for something, you know.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that actually, whether you might have separate lists for different groups of people.
Yeah, we do. We keep our benefactors separately. Yeah. And I mean, for instance, recently we were after buying a defibrillator, so we spent quite a lot of time telling people we want to buy a defibrillator, and we now have one.
Yeah,
good,
brilliant. That's so helpful. Thanks, Giles. And you know, yeah, we use MailChimp as an organisation. You know, Laura does do that, but I know how useful it is, and obviously we're dealing with a lot more members. But I think, as you say, something where you don't have to worry about it, 'cause, you know, it's a scary thing. I think people are worried about, you know, people's data, GDPR. You know, what are the repercussions of that if something does?
If you have a big leak, you're going to jail.
Yeah, huge fine.
I suspect that the shedders probably aren't in that league, but no, I mean, big owners. Though I don't believe anybody actually has been jailed yet, but that is the threat anyway.
Well, big fines for organisations as well is certainly possible, isn't
certainly
it?
True.
Yeah. It's best to be safe, isn't it? And as you say, dealing with your members, you know, it's about that trust as well, of people going to the shed and knowing that their information is safe and secure.
It's got to be an adequate level of trust, you know, as we were talking about, some shedders are quite happy for personal data to be released. I mean, I know a lot of people are really happy to let their email address go out to all and sundry. I am not. Similarly, I do not do social media, which you might find a bit odd for a technical geek like me. But when I joined Sky, there were two things they did with us. One, they put us in front of two Sky journalists, told us a secret that we couldn't let them know, and it took them about 5 minutes to get it out of us. And the second thing they did was they sat us in front of the lawyers, who basically scared the bejeebers out of us about social media. And I have never used it since.
Well, we've just had a comment actually. I'll just flash it up. So I think this was Peter from Felix.
Yeah.
So saying we use WhatsApp group to get to members quickly rather than MailChimp.
Yeah, we do too.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. WhatsApp is good. However, there are people who don't use it like me. But the thing about MailChimp is it gives you all this feedback about who's looking at it, what's the response like. And WhatsApp is very unprivate. It is not good at all. I do not like the idea that an individual can add my WhatsApp credentials to people who I don't know. I think that's a severe intrusion on my privacy, and one of the big reasons why I don't use WhatsApp. And you can't really leave a group anonymously, which is really, you get sucked into a group and then suddenly, you want to leave, and everybody's going, "Oh, Giles is a miserable person."
Yeah,
I just don't like all of that. The lack of anonymity is quite hard.
I think a lot of sheds do use WhatsApp, and I think I think definitely for this reason, to quickly get a quick short message out. Not everyone's checking their emails all the time.
Absolutely, it has that.
It's got its uses, definitely.
It's very good for that, but I wouldn't use it for. Certainly, wouldn't put any private data into it.
No. Yeah. Tim, did you have it? Sorry, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say WhatsApp, as far as I'm concerned, is a daily, hourly thing, an instant thing. I'm not coming, or I'm coming, or there's traffic or something. Whereas MailChimp is at the newsletter, it's going to be in the longer term. It's a time span thing.
Yeah, and usually a MailChimp email, I mean, if you're sending a newsletter out, it's going to be several paragraphs. I would hope you've got enough information to fill several paragraphs.
Yeah. Brill. And then just had a final comment. Emma from the Humber Alliance has said she'd be happy to join any focus
brilliant. Thank you, Emma.
Skills. Far from an expert. Well, this is what we need. We need people who all different levels, because it's no good if everyone's an expert and it's not accessible then to people who are beginners trying to implement this for their sheds either. So
I suspect Emma is far more expert in Facebook than I am.
And then Peter said thanks from sunny Felix. So that's nice that you've got a bit of sun.
Yeah, actually, the sun is coming out here in Mendlesham too. We're only about 20-30 miles apart, I suspect.
And then just the last kind of thing, we've got 2 more sessions, one both in June, aren't they, Giles? And I will flash up the background, the picture for the next one. I think it will obscure us all, but there we go. The next one is about member attendance logging, and that's on the 10th of June, 2:30 p.m. So if you'd like to join that, again, the link will be on Facebook and YouTube. So
the next one's going to be a fun session because we get to play with toys next time.
Live demonstration.
I don't know live, but we'll attempt it.
But
any final questions from Tim or thoughts from Giles?
No, interesting. And I think to have a session at Shedfest, I would certainly subscribe to. I think that will really get to the people, because not everybody is able to come on to the webinars or whatever.
No, I think
and on the previous tech session, certainly we're taking the step forward in terms of your recommendations in terms of inventory maintenance on all the equipment and whatever. And I don't think many people realise how much of this stuff is free in terms of being able to access, so many QR codes and whatever to mark equipment, and also, as you've just demonstrated today, the MailChimp facility.
Yeah. We have. I don't think we've bought any software at all for Debenham Shed. The only expense we have is obviously our hosting provider. But I think possibly if we all got together under the Shed umbrella, we might be able to negotiate a countrywide deal for all sheds, which would save quite a bit of money. I mean, hosting is not cheap.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. And I'm glad you could make it. And apologies for my technical issues at the start.
Next time.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for everyone's comments. This session, you can watch it back on YouTube. So if you've missed anything or any of the info that Giles has talked about, and you can email Giles as well, info@debenhamshed.org.uk if you've got any questions for him. He's very generously shared his email or his shed email with us. So
I'm not going to give you a private one.
Don't blame you. Right. Oh, well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Tim, and thank you, Giles. And we'll see you next time.
No problem. See you next time, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.